forged on the gridiron in September. Perfected in the magic of March. For the fans who love the crunch of the pads, prefer a dunk, and expect nothing but the best. It's Bigger Ten. Here's Steve Deace.
Greetings. Merry Christmas to everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Bigger Ten. I am Steve Deace alongside my co-host, never partner, Aaron McIntyre. Good to see you, brother. I always got to clarify that. How are you, man?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. I'm holding on by a thin thread. I mean,
it was a tough night. We'll get
everything that I thought would happen happened in the worst case scenario. But other than that, I'm fine. I'm fine.
So tell me,
fine.
I know he's really little yet.
Yeah.
But is little McIntyre kind of getting the Christmas thing with the lights and all that stuff, or is it still going to maybe be a year away for you guys?
It's probably going to be a year away. I've been taking him over to the tree almost every day, and we've got one little ornament that's the narwhal and elf, and it has the little sound clip of that interaction, and he likes those ornaments. We've got also one of those Republic Starfighter ornaments as well that my father-in-law gave me that has some cool sounds on it. So he likes those, but I've been getting my guitar out, singing him some Christmas tunes, and I think he'd rather stick to Baby Beluga.
Could be just your singing, who knows? But
True.
I love the fact, though, that he's already into Elf. That is clearly a man of very refined tastes.
No kidding.
All right, so let's get to our rundown this week here on Bigger Ten. It is our Big Five here on Bigger Ten. And let us begin with a headline I frankly thought we were never going to discuss in the history of this show. At the start of this year, Aaron, it looked like Michigan was 100 miles and running away from winning a Big Ten championship anytime soon. 2% odds in the ESPN FPI preseason to win the Big Ten. Season win total of just 7.5. I know I gave the under out as the best bet and lost my ass. Okay, but now here they are with new coordinators, an offensive coordinator who was unproven heading into the year and just won the Broyles Award, a defensive coordinator that had never called a defense, never coordinated a defense, an offensive line coach that had never coached an offensive line, a quarterbacks coach who had actually never coached quarterbacks. Should I go on? Okay, and yet here Michigan is, champions of the Big Ten. I believe this is the first time in Big Ten history that 3 teams have won 10 or more games. So this was not a weak league by any stretch of the imagination, and Michigan is the champion, absolutely dismantling Iowa, which I just think for your team, it was a tough matchup, Aaron. You guys want to force teams to play off schedule and in a bit of a mosh pit physically and not with the flashy spread offenses. But you know what? We like playing that way. We kind of play the exact same way. We just recruited a different level. And so I kind of thought that was why it would be a bad matchup for Iowa. I didn't think it'd be 42-3 bad. But then you throw in the fact that Iowa doesn't even have a Nathan Chandler competent quarterback, let alone a Ricky Stanzi, Drew Tate playmaking one. And that was a recipe for things to eventually snowball, and they did. Still a great season for Iowa, and we'll talk about that here in a moment. But Aaron, just how improbable was it? Go back and tell our August selves that this is the show we would do in mid-December. Michigan from 2-4, Harbaugh taking one of the most embarrassing pay cuts in college sports history to now Big Ten champions.
Yeah, it's incredible, as we talked about last week, just like everybody expected. This matchup, especially Michigan being there as well, and laying it on thick at the beginning of the show, notwithstanding. I'm impressed with Michigan for sure on a few different levels. Beginning with this, I would rather win. I would rather my team win than anything else. Okay, I don't care if I'm wrong about anything on my takes on my team. I'd rather they win. But if they don't win, I'd like to be right. And boy, I was right about Michigan football. Notwithstanding also the 1 week of trolls from me about Nebraska East. What did I tell you on this program and off the air as well?
I thought it was a good troll. I told you that, actually. I thought it was a quality troll.
Before the season, on this program and off the air as well, I told you, Steve, you know what? They still recruit at a very high level. these coaches are there for some reason. They have something going on, but those players especially, they're a bunch of 18 to 20, 22, 23-year-old young men who are very talented and have been told all off season by everybody and their mother's dog that they were dead on arrival.
Yeah.
They were dead on arrival. And what does that do to the psyche of that team? I said that they could come out and they could maybe surprise some people this year. I didn't think they'd get as far as they did, but I thought, you know what, if that togetherness, if it was just everybody chip on their shoulder, everybody man to man, linked in arms, you know, this could be a formidable team. So I think that analysis, if you can call it that, on Michigan has rang through this season, because primarily we won't know if it's a true culture change, and there's good reason to think that it is, but we won't know if it's true culture change until next season or the next couple of seasons play out.
When they're back in the preseason top 10 and top 5
exactly.
all over again.
When the expectations are high again, what will their reaction be? So for right now, all of those young men on that team, that's on them. This entire season is on them. Not that the coaching staff doesn't deserve credit, but really at the end of the day, I think those players are the ones who deserve all of the accolades. As you talked about on Michigan podcast the other day, you know, Aiden Hutchinson, he's going to be in New York. Congrats to him. That's super cool that a defensive player is going to be in New York for the Heisman Trophy ceremony. But as you talked about yesterday, it wasn't like a standout player here or there. It was just a team effort. It was the team, if you catch my drift. Now, as far as Jim Harbaugh goes, I don't want to belabor this point too long. I'm sure you're enjoying me singing the praises of your favorite team.
Yeah, by all means.
In Michigan.
Notice I'm not interrupting you like typically do, weirdly.
There's a certain generation in this country that just never grew up. Just never grew up. You know who I'm talking about. But in the midst of this, if this is truly a culture change, that is on Jim Harbaugh, and that's a good thing. How great of a story, and how many times do you hear this story at the highest levels of any industry in this country? And yes, college football is an industry. At the highest levels of industry or politics or culture, how many times do guys just hold on way too long? Don't know when to say no, don't know when to quit. And it's fundamentally because they lack humility. Now, Jim Harbaugh, I dare say, probably didn't humble himself. He got humbled. But then after that, I think there was a realization that, hey, I got to do something different here.
You still got to accept that. Yeah.
Because other than the printing up the Big Ten Champs banner, I didn't see What's Your Deal, Jimmy, all season. Even after the Ohio State game, and this is just from the outside looking in. This is from the outside looking in. You follow this team a lot closer than I do. I follow it closer than the average fan does just because of what I do for you for Michigan podcast. That looked like a shell-shocked, like I'm disassociating here in a good way type of thing after the Ohio State game. To me, anyway.
Yeah, it looked like, hot damn, Jimmy, isn't this fun?
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of what it looked like. Yes.
Exactly. So all that is to say, I think that's a really cool story if it actually ends up being that Jim Harbaugh just kind of humbled himself after being humbled and then changed the culture because of that. That's a really cool story. Humility is vastly lacking. A healthy humility is vastly lacking in our country and society. And I think if that's what happened with Jim Harbaugh and these are the results, that's a cool story.
You make a great point about all the negative feedback because for a program like Michigan, especially when they're good, there's this reputation that Michigan has earned, frankly, of being a little bit elitist and soft, right? Now you take all these guys with all these recruiting accolades who maybe in the past might have been tempted to think that the world owes me something because of that, right? And not put in that extra ounce of work, right? And now you tell them you suck and the horse you rode it on. You give them that little extra edge of motivation for them to go ahead. And as Aiden Hutchinson famously said to the strength and conditioning staff back in January, ring me out. He was already a first-round draft pick. You know, now he might be the number 1 overall draft pick. So I think you make a very good point there. And that's one of the ways you go from the first team ever to start the season unranked in the AP poll and end it in the college football playoff, as Michigan just did, which brings us to said college football playoff. The matchups are set. Cincinnati, number 4, takes on number 1, Alabama in the Cotton Bowl. Number 2, Michigan takes on number 3, Georgia in the Orange Bowl. Alabama, a little more than a 2-touchdown favorite over Cincinnati, the first group of 5 team to make it to the field to shatter that glass ceiling. And they did it right before they were about to head off to the Big 12 and join the Power 5. Georgia about a touchdown or so favorite over Michigan after being the number 1 ranked team most of the year until it got blitzkrieged by Alabama. So first, Aaron, did they get the right 4 teams? And then secondly, did they seed them appropriately?
I think they got the right 4 teams. You know, I can squabble about the rankings. I don't think Alabama, you know, they handled Georgia in one game. That was one game. They lost to an unranked team earlier in the season. They struggled with Arkansas. I'm not really sure they deserve to be number 1, but then when you handle the number 1 team the way that they did, it's tough to argue against that. Michigan, what sucks for them is that Georgia, again, Kirby Smart could not knock Alabama because it looked like it was going to be number 2 Michigan versus number 3 Cincinnati. That would have been a much easier path, I dare say, to make it to the national championship game. Now we're going to get Alabama, Georgia. That's what the chalk says. Again, redux for like the 55th time, and we all know how that's going to go if chalk plays out. So, you know, I really can't squabble too much with the rankings. I imagine Alabama will take care of business. I think it was an 8.5 opening line for Georgia versus Michigan. That's way inflated, guys. It's just way inflated. And it came down, I believe, a point or 2, or at least a 1.5, at least that same day. It reminds me of the Ohio State-Michigan line. Actually, it really does. Where it looks like the books are just going to rely on the national perception of SEC as the gold standard. And that's not to say that Georgia couldn't just, you know, thrash Michigan, but I can't say that Michigan wouldn't, you know, do the same to Georgia as well. So I think that is an inflated line. And I wouldn't be shocked if this one comes down to the end or there is some surprise miracle here where Michigan, you know, they can't come out with their heads on fire. I think, as you talked about yesterday, Michigan podcast, both teams motivationally going to be at max lit, which is going to be fun to see. But I just think that line is vastly overrated. It's going to be a much more competitive game. And I think all the pressure right now actually is going to be on Georgia because you just got your butts handed to you.
Yeah.
You were expected. You were right in for the national championship game. Michigan, since beating Ohio State, they're playing with house money, man. They're playing with house money. Of course, there's going to be some pressure on them. They're in the college football playoff. They don't have the same kind of pressure I don't think that Georgia has.
Can you believe it's been over 50 years since these two teams have played, by the way, given how good they are? They've not met in bowl games anywhere. It's been over 50 years. All right, let's talk about your Iowa Hawkeyes, who still did win the West. Yeah, Aaron, there's only 6 teams in your school's history that have won 10 games or more in the regular season. Kirk Ferentz has now coached 4 of those teams. So when you look at Iowa's offense, which was offensive, I mean, one of the great lines of all time by the old Tampa Bay Buccaneer USC coach John McKay, when he was asked as the Buccaneers were going 0-14 their first year in the NFL, what he thought of his offense's execution. And his famous response was, I'm in favor of it. Okay. I can't even imagine as an Iowa fan where you're already conditioned for pedestrian, keep the game close, try to win it at the end, or wait for the other team to make mistakes kind of offense, right? That's how Kirk has masterfully built a program that doesn't recruit at an elite level, but still wins a crap ton of games and develops a crap ton of pros because that's your identity. You have a culture there. So already Iowa fan is conditioned to not, expect 35 point per game offenses, right? But even by Iowa standard, that offense this year, the quarterback situation, and this goes back to what I was saying before, why I thought it was a bad matchup for Iowa, because it's not just that you're looking at a higher recruiting version of your own image, but then there's no even competent quarterback like Nathan Chandler from back in the day, let alone a Drew Tate or a Ricky Stanzi kind of a playmaker at that position. And you saw Michigan expose that, particularly when Iowa got into the red zone, 4 times and only came away with 3 points in that entire game. So overall, an outstanding season for Iowa, given its history and tradition. 10-win seasons, nothing to sneeze at. Until recently, that was the pinnacle that Jim Harbaugh could accomplish at Michigan. But at the same time, there has to be some existential questions like, okay, guys, what are we doing here on offense, right?
No,
Okay.
no. We've got 20 years of data that says the answer to that question is no. Here's the thing, particularly with the Big Ten championship game. Iowa got a 3-and-out for Michigan, drove right down the field. A fake, a trick play, Riverboat Kirk, as we like to call him in Iowa fandom, overthrown or pot-a-bomb the fullback, stopped running, blah, 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 and then you miss a chippy field goal. I was like, this thing could get out of hand. Usually when those things happen to an Iowa team where you can't even get a field goal when you drive down that deep, that's not a good omen. Now, we did suck you into the black hole for about a quarter and a half of Iowa football. Punting is winning. Other than that, though,
I love that.
Yikes.
I love that line.
Yikes. So here's the double-edged sword with Iowa, and it actually goes on. This conversation actually goes well beyond just Iowa. This is a conversation generally a lot of football fan bases can have. Football, for better or worse, is still a 3-phase game. You've got offense, defense, and special teams. Iowa is very good, or at least doesn't screw up a whole heck of a lot in defense and special teams.
Mm-hmm.
And so in a division like the Big Ten West, you can win a lot of games. Been the better part of a decade since Iowa has lost to Nebraska. Better part of a decade since Iowa has lost to Minnesota. 2 border rivals. Been the better part of a decade since Iowa has lost to their in-state rivals, Iowa State. Those are important games to the psyche, I guess, of a fan base. Can be important games overall, depending on how those other teams are doing in a given season. You can win a lot of games in a division like that. But then, when you go up against a team that actually has a better-than-average offense, who can actually score points on your better-than-average defense, and you in turn have to figure out a way to score points that don't come from special teams or defense, that's when you can get rolled up on and snowballed on. And you saw that 3 times. The 3 losses this season, Steve, I want to say, it was an average, I think, of like 3 possessions. That's not good. Obviously, that is not good at all. So, this is for better or worse, still a 3-phase game. And Iowa here's a really weird hot take for you. I think Iowa had a similar type of season as Rutgers. They just didn't play in the same division, and they got a little bit more lucky. Rutgers, they are good or getting better at the things that you can choose to be good or better at. Mm-hmm. Effort plays, defense, special teams.
Sure.
Iowa is really good at the things that you can choose to be good at. Defense, special teams, hustle plays, whatever you want to call them. Offensively, though, for a long time, Iowa, I thought Iowa just needed some playmakers on the outside who could get open. They have some athletic wide receivers, guys, now. Okay, Keegan Johnson and Arlen Bruce. Keegan Johnson is incredible as a freshman, a true freshman. That's not the problem. It's the scheme. You said the quarterback. Yeah, it is both and. Every time you've said quarterback, I've said offensive line. It's both and now. It's the quarterback and the offensive line. Is that a bad combination? That's a bad combination. So again, the overall message here is it's still a 3-phase game. And when you go up against guys that are better at the phases that you're good at, you can get rolled up on. If you come up against a team that's better at the one phase you're bad at, you can still get rolled up on. But you can win a lot of games in the process, and as you said, 10 wins is still a good season.
I thought the most telling stat of Iowa's season, Aaron, was that in Big Ten play, Iowa averaged a little more, prior to playing Michigan, averaged a little more than 25 points per game. If you take away all the points they scored on defense during Big Ten play, the number drops to 21 points per game.
They scored 16 touchdowns. I think it was 16 touchdowns in their first 6 games offensively. They scored 9. If even
that's
9
crazy.
in their final 6 or final 7.
That taking away all points scored on defense only reduces your total by a little more than a field goal.
Mm-hmm.
That's nuts. All right, let's get to the rest of the Big Ten Bowl alignment here. Big Ten Bowl bids are out. We'll give you a quick rundown and quick thoughts on what we have. Let's start with, on Tuesday, December the 28th, West Virginia, who opened the year against Maryland, remember, taking on Maryland. And I can't even see that. Where is that game at?
It's at the Goodness gracious, maybe we should make that a little bit larger. It's at the Guaranteed Rate Bowl
Guaranteed Rate Bowl. Thank you.
in Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah, all four of my eyes could not read that, even on our big giant screen here. Maryland against Virginia Tech, who has no coach and is 6-6. That's the Pinstripe Bowl this year. Clearly, Maryland's prodigious reputation for traveling is why the Pinstripe Bowl thought, hey, these guys are close by. The 14 Maryland fans will all come to Yankee Stadium. We've got, I think the Music City Bowl is a fascinating matchup. Two very explosive offenses. Here's a tip. I don't even know what the total is. Bet the over.
Yep.
We have Josh Heupel and his up-tempo for Tennessee. Very surprising year for them to get to 7 wins in year one with all the attrition. And Purdue and Jeff Brom with Aiden O'Connell, was the best quarterback in the league, not named C.J. Stroud this year. Real renaissance for Purdue, but the Boilermakers will be without George Karlaftis and David Bell. They're two best players in Nashville. You have to think that's basically a home game for Tennessee. Wisconsin and Arizona State in the brand new Las Vegas Bowl out there at Allegiant Stadium in Vegas. Disappointing season for Wisconsin, but Badger fans typically amongst the best travelers in the country. I got to believe
Wisconsin and the points.
Yeah. I got to believe Badger fans I know we only went 8-4, but dude, it's Vegas. Vegas, baby, Vegas. All right. And then we have Georgia and Michigan, as we already talked about, coming up New Year's Eve in the Orange Bowl for the college football playoff semifinals. And then on New Year's Day, a trio of Big Ten teams, the Outback Bowl, bypassing both Wisconsin and Purdue. And Wisconsin had not been to the Outback Bowl, I think, since 2015 with Melvin Gordon. It'd been a while. But they took Penn State to go up against Arkansas, who was a good story this year, finished in the top 25. Disappointing 7-5 season for Penn State. James Franklin just 11-10 in his last 21 games. Iowa heads back to the Citrus Bowl, I believe, for the first time since Tate to Holloway, right? Mm-hmm. And taking on Kentucky. Surprised the Citrus Bowl went with Kentucky for the second time in 4 years? They
instead
just
of
played,
Texas A&M.
Yeah, instead of A&M, yeah, because they just played Penn State there in Trace McSorley's senior year. But those two fan bases will sell that stadium out, I have to believe. And then Utah against Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. Utah just a totally different team since they switched at quarterback from Charlie Brewer to Cameron Rising. I would venture to guess their analytics are right up there with every single one of the college football playoff teams since that happened.
Yep. If they would have started the season with him, they would have been a CFP contender.
Very likely. And then Ohio State, it's funny, they get to take on a team that's very similar to what they just lost to in Michigan in terms of their style of play. Now, obviously, Utah doesn't recruit at that level, but it's hard to outdraw Ohio State at a bowl game. We're going to find out if it's possible because you have to believe the entire damn city of Salt Lake is going to be in Pasadena for Utah's first ever Rose Bowl trip. There's some talk that it might be Kyle Whittingham, their great coach's final game, that he might be thinking of retirement. We shall see. So your thoughts on the bowl assignments for the Big Ten this season?
So just so the Orange Bowl notwithstanding, I think the funnest matchup there is Pittsburgh, Michigan State.
Oh, I didn't even get to that. My bad. That was not an intended slight, Sparty. I apologize. I totally forgot about that. That's a great matchup with Narduzzi there against who helped helped D'Antonio build Michigan State into a power with his no-fly zone defense. He was a tremendous DC there. Now, Pitt, of course, likes to chuck it all over the yard with Heisman finalist Kenny Pickett. Michigan State, one of the worst pass defenses in college football. But Pitt has lost its OC, Mark Whipple. He's heading to Nebraska, actually, and he's not coaching the bowl game. And Kenny Pickett said today that he's not sure he'll play in the bowl game there. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, so maybe that might change my opinion on that game. Otherwise, it looked like a pretty good matchup on paper. I think the other good game, obviously, is going to be the aforementioned Utah at Ohio State. Should be entertaining at the very least. If you had to put a gun to my head right now, I'd say Utah would come away with that. They're just playing at such a high level right now. I mean, just kicking Oregon's butt. I believe 2 out of 3 weeks, or maybe did they play them back to back? I can't remember.
Yeah, they played them back to back.
Yeah, rivalry week, and then the actual Pac-12 championship game. So those are the two that stand out to me the most. The rest of these, I kind of just yawn at. Again, congratulations to Maryland, especially for making a bowl game. Could have been easy to just pack it in this season, but the rest of these. Arizona State can be a fun team to watch sometimes, especially if you're up late on a Saturday night. But they're nowhere near the physicality that Wisconsin will bring to the table. So I think that one's That one caught my eye for a minute, and I think that one's going to be all Wisconsin.
All right, real quick, gun to your head, over under 5 Big Ten Bowl wins. What are you thinking?
I'll say
under? Under 5?
Under, yep.
Okay. All right, let's get to basketball really quick because we did have some big news on that front. Mark Turgeon out for Maryland. Now, I have no idea what it accomplished firing him this early in the year, and the team just turned around and lost at home. I can't remember who it was to, somebody bad. But this guy just won the Big Ten in 2020. Now, I know he has been a disappointment. I don't think Maryland's made it past the Sweet 16 since he's been the coach there. Maryland's kind of developed a bit of a reputation for outcoaching itself and losing big games. But from winning the Big Ten in 2020, Aaron, to out of a job in early December, and I just don't know what it accomplished for Maryland to do that now, this early in the year, other than send a signal to your program, to your players, that you really don't care about this season. But what do you think?
It's really curious. I don't recall a coach who has voluntarily left at this point in the season.
That means they gave me the buyout number that I wanted.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's really odd. We'll see how much buy-in there is from the locker room there in Maryland, but that's really all I have to say about it. It's just kind of odd. I get kind of sick. We haven't even talked about the coaching carousel much.
I know
on this podcast.
I know.
I'm sick of these coaches because there are some people who are just adamant. We know one personally, Todd, your editor on the show, who makes some great points and great arguments against just being able to transfer everywhere you go willy-nilly and really undercutting the purpose, the original intended purpose of collegiate athletics. Those arguments get hard to make when you've got coaches just, okay, see you all later. Peace out. I'm done here.
Yeah.
Just walking out on their teams. That's what they're doing.
Brian Kelly was in the home of a recruit when the news broke that he was going to go to Notre Dame. The family is watching this on TV. They ask him about it, and he tells them right to their face, it's total BS.
I'm getting the picture.
Told
I don't know
them that
about
right to
you.
their faces.
I don't know about you. I'm getting the picture that Brian Kelly may not be a super great human being. Are you getting that vibe from him?
My family says never go against the family, right? All right, we'll come back, play our weekly game of Would You Rather here next. Back yet again here on Bigger Ten, and it is time to play once more our weekly game of Would You Rather. So, Aaron, we begin with you. Would you rather, actually, I do that at the end here. The Big Ten West remains winless in Big Ten title games with about a 20-point average margin of defeat. Would you rather the Big Ten sticks with the current divisional alignment or gets rid of the divisions altogether, which this year would have led to, if it was a Big 12 approach, Michigan and Ohio State would have just ran it back the very next week. So, but what say you? What do you think?
So this is in keeping with my answer to your next Would You Rather proposition. And I would rather stick to the current format as it is right now, because I think that provides as much, I don't want to say opportunity, I guess opportunity to the entire Big Ten. I think that's good for the entire league so that you have more fan bases than Michigan and Ohio State and Penn State invested in their teams and a year in and year out. I think that's good for the overall health of the league right now. I will say, however, my answer will change if the college football playoff expands to between 8 and 12, even more yet, 12 teams. If it does that, then I say get rid of the divisions altogether, because then you have a reason, if you're the rest of the league, to maybe on a good year for an Iowa or a Minnesota or Nebraska, if they come back as well, on a good year for them, you don't have to win your league, but you still have an opportunity to make it to the college football playoff. But for now, keep it the way it is. Next one is for you. If you were deficient in one area of the game of football, would you rather be deficient on offense, defense, or special teams?
I think I'd choose special teams, even though you must be sound in the kicking game. But you access that less than other places. And I think that it's easier for me to cover. It's not easy to cover a deficiency in any of these areas, but it's the least difficult in special teams just by the lack of capacity.
Tell that to Nebraska.
Good point. Okay. But if they convert a few more third downs, they're not punting the ball as much, right? If they're more efficient in the red zone, they're not kicking as many field goals.
Sure.
Right? Okay. And so if I've got a bad punter, if I get more defensive stops, I can just mitigate. I can win the field position battle that way with 3 and outs, even if I can't win it necessarily with my own kicking game. I just think that and you're going to tell me as an Iowa fan, hey, we have figured out that special teams absolutely makes you better on defense. True. But as great of a kicker as Caleb Shudak was this year, and he decided to actually miss one, I guess, in the worst possible time, that didn't alleviate the stress and strain on your offense, right?
Correct.
And so to me, I just think that because of the capacity, the volume that the other two units are on the field, it would suck to be deficient in any of them, but if I had to choose, I would choose special teams.
Well said.
All right, for you, would you rather Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren goes ahead and signs off on immediate college football expansion at the next meeting in January that will determine when and if this happens, or hold off and have 4 more years of the current format until other networks, like we are partnered with, can compete with ESPN for the rights?
I would rather hold off, and I'm okay not expanding the playoff at all for several years. Actually, not going to happen. I'd be okay with not expanding it for several years for the expressed purpose, and I mean this in all sincerity, of punishing Oklahoma and Texas and sending a message. I'm serious, sending a message to Michigan and Ohio State and maybe even Penn State. Don't you dare try this. If you do this, if you try to leave us for the SEC and create a super conference, you're gonna be stuck in the muck and mire there, and you might not see daylight again. Because let's face it, we talked about this ad nauseum last August. This is bad for the entire sport. It really is, or at least it's going down the road that's bad for the entire sport. You still have to have anchors for your league, which is why we always say it's better for the Big Ten when Nebraska is good. It's better for the Big Ten when all of your big brands are good, because that draws more eyeballs and that helps everybody else out as well. So I'm good with punishing Oklahoma and Texas right now, to send a message to them as punishment, and to send a message to any other teams, any other blue bloods looking to jump ship from their conferences and join the SEC. Final one is for you. Would you
Respect the spite.
Would you rather be Mel Tucker or James Franklin? This is wide open. Take this as you will.
I think I'd rather be Mel Tucker. They both got ridiculous contracts, but I think what will be asked of Mel Tucker in exchange for that and to satisfy the fan base will be more realistic to sustain than what is going to be asked of James Franklin. He's now, we've already pointed out what his record and numbers are. I think it's a 69% win percentage at Penn State without Joe Moorhead as OC, and it's like 80% in the years that he had Joe Moorhead as his OC. He's now lost Brett Pry, his outstanding co-defensive coordinator. There's talk that his other co-defensive coordinator, Anthony Poindexter, may end up being the coach at Virginia. Those two guys may end up being the coaches at Virginia and Virginia Tech, two rivals there. So who's Penn State's quarterback? I don't know. They could, because of COVID, Sean Clifford could have another year. They don't really have a younger guy that's a hotshot recruit they've been grooming. Of course, the transfer portal is always there, but I just think what Michigan State's going to ask of Mel Tucker to sustain and justify that money is going to be more realistic to achieve than what's going to be asked of James Franklin to do it, Aaron.
It's well said. Yeah, I would still. I go back to last week. I would rather be in our topic about who would you rather be in the just got paid Brinks Truck Bucks Bowl. I would still rather be Mel Tucker because of the upside that you can sell if things don't go perfectly in the next few years.
All right, we'll come back, wrap things up with our Twitter poll and feedback of the week next. This week's Twitter poll results, we asked you if we offered you plus 110 odds on either side of this prop bet, which side would you bet? Michigan wins the Natty or the Big Ten wins all of its other bowl games? All right, so the Big Ten goes 9-0 in bowl games, or Michigan wins the Natty. You get plus 110 on both of these. 66% of you said that you would vote for Michigan, or you'd bet on Michigan winning the Natty than the Big Ten sweeping its bowl games. Just about 34% of you said that option. Which one would you take, Aaron?
Michigan wins the Natty. Maybe I'm the one that's wrong, that's bad at math here. Or is 34.3% of our audience bad at math? Because you realize how many other games
You
are
guys
there?
ever just win 2 games opposed to 9? Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yeah. So -110 or whatever the odds are, you'd get like at worst like a 15-1 parlay if you hit all of those other bowls. +110 is not very valuable on that. So if it was just between those, I would take Michigan wins the Natty.
All right, let's get to our feedback of the week. Sports Innovation Burner says that my bowl projections were the worst take ever.
Sports Innovation, no, he's saying his take is the worst take ever.
Oh, his own take is?
Yeah, is that what he's saying?
I don't know. I just thought that even if that I'm sure I have put something on this account that is worthy of being called the worst take ever. So even if it's not this, I'm sure it was something, and so I thought it should be recognized.
You didn't really miss too many there, did you?
Not too many. I got Vegas and the
Vegas
Outback switched around. I got Iowa's opponent wrong.
Pinstripe and guaranteed rate, mixed up. That wasn't too bad.
No, that's not too bad at all. So for the worst take ever, I guess it's okay. All right, that'll do it for this week's episode of Bigger Ten. We will see you again in a couple of weeks. We'll have a breakdown of every single Big Ten bowl game. We'll have a special postseason episode bowl game preview. We look forward to that. Until then, please follow us on Twitter at Bigger Ten to keep up to date on what we think about all things Big Ten and more. Remember to like, rate, subscribe, follow, 5-star review, share, whichever applies, whether it's right here on our channel on YouTube or iTunes, Google Play, etc. Help us to find more Big Ten sports fans just like you. And for Aaron McIntyre, I'm Steve Deace. We will see you next time.